level.
But lots of positive feedback because it allowed people time to actually have staff on farm show us the improvements they've been making or ask for advice and education around planting, winter grazing, etc.
Thanks,
Peter, Mr. McDonald.
oh, yeah, thanks very much. Just under current topical issues, winter grazing. There's a few questions yesterday at a meeting around that, and perhaps the front loading, you could say, of a comms right now could really pay dividends later in the year. I'm really concerned of what I'm hearing a wee bit, that people are wrapping all this stuff up with winter grazing around walk away from regulation, central government down to local government. I just wouldn't like to go around and see examples of that this winter. So maybe some investment, early on investment now, and I see that's really good. Schedule, messaging schedule to go out to our community. I would think about really putting a large amount of effort into that community messaging.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we've worked with our comms team to develop a little bit of a time frame for when we can push out what we feel regular messaging for when we've done inspections prior and afterwards and those sorts of things. But there's also lots of scope for things for as and when we find issues to be able to put that out. So
Yeah.
That's
good supplementary. So maybe coordinated across the whole entity when it comes to the chairman's articles in the paper and things like that too, a combined effort to really front load that investment. Yeah, just a suggestion.
Yeah, just to respond a little bit further, Councillor Donald, you're quite correct. I think regular and constant communication in this matter is important, and across the organisation in any opportunity, because there is a concern that some members of the community think that the rules don't no longer apply, and that's understandable with the amount of messaging out. So we've got to be really clear that the rules do apply, notwithstanding the fact that we've seen year on year improvements in intensive winter grazing. So our focus is to ensure that level of improvement continues as well. So it's helpful to acknowledge the good work that's gone on, but also just remind people that actually the rules still apply. Yeah.
Just, Mr. Chairman, we'll just respond to that. Absolutely right. Our role has been to support the changes from landowners throughout the region, and that's been happening. And I totally believe, the absolute majority of these landowners will not give up those hard gains. And I always have a concern about moving backwards on something and leaving it to a new generation to go through all those hard times that we went through, if you know what I mean. We don't want to go back. So, very good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you just run me through those numbers again? The number of inspections were?
So we completed 203 inspections.
203 and 56.
56% of those 203 were non-compliant, for anything from not submitting data to having ponded effluent as we flew over. and 48% of the non-compliances were for technical non-compliance. So that's not submitting paperwork, keeping the data up to date.
Right, so do you have a theory or an idea of why people didn't do that? I mean, some people have suggested a few things like national governments, but what do you think is the cause of that?
Through you, Chair, we regularly, when we ask the consent holders about what the barriers are towards having that paperwork, they are busy. They're busy on farm. It's one of the things that it's easy to sit aside and wait to get round to another day, and that day just doesn't happen. So we're starting to send out, when a new consent is initiated, we send out almost like a letter of understanding, reminding them of timeframes, so they can pin that on a notice board, so it becomes an annual reminder of what needs to be in and when in relation to their consent conditions, to try and aid in increasing that.
Yeah, thank you. So through you, Mr. Chairman, there's no penalty for that technical non-compliance, is there?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So there is the ability to charge a non-supply fee, which is set out in our fees and charges schedule. And if it's an ongoing non-compliance and we can't get the data and it's really required for us to be able to understand what's happening, then we do issue that. And also if it's ongoing for long periods of time, a grade 2, which is technical non-compliance, can be escalated to a grade 5 as part of our grading process.
And the fee for that form, the application form, is how much is that, just to get the paperwork done?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so a non-supply fee is around $1,600 currently.
Right, okay. There's no, are people mentioning that they think that's a barrier?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we often have people pay the fee and still not send us the data. So sometimes it's not the amount of the fee, it's sometimes the consent holder receives the fee and realises someone else hasn't done the paperwork, so they're able to follow that up. In those situations, we do consider remittal of the fee.
Okay, thank you, thanks.
Councillor Fowler. Oh, silly question. The paperwork isn't that hard. I can't hear you. I'm just saying, sorry, I'm just sort of saying it loud, but the paperwork isn't that hard. And I'm just trying to understand. I know I'm terrible at paperwork. I know it's usually a rush, but at the end. But I'm just trying to work out, when they charge pay the fee. I think because it'd probably be good if it maybe sent around the councillors just what is the paperwork? Explain what. That would be actually good so everybody understands what actually, Morris is asking questions. So just to identify what those I'm not talking about the physical non-compliance, but the paperwork side of things. I've got a quick, I'll carry on with that in regards to obviously water tax. Now we've got the water and land play. There'll be things, permitted activity goes up to 86,000 litres. It's going to ask, do we know how many permitted activities will come into play?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that'll be totally dependent on whether consent holders wish to relinquish their consent.
But how, okay, then
So,
turn around.
yeah.
It could be.
I think it's estimated around 700 to 900.
Yeah. There's quite a few permitted activities. So all of a sudden that's actually been, I suppose, a positive from the regulatory side of things, that people are getting the be less involvement. They'll still have to probably have conditions if they're taking and things. Is that right in regards to permitted activities?
So they'll have to be under the permitted activity volume to be remaining as a permitted activity. Anything over that will need to be consented.
So do we have to see it if you're in the permitted side of things? Do you have to send in your data?
Mr. Chair, we will be seeking voluntary compliance with submitting that data so that we can keep an eye on it. There is a request from the science and planning teams to keep having that data come through. So we'll continue to send out reminders and asking for that data to come through to help with allocations.
So that'll be notified. I'm just saying, just informing the public there is a change of law. Tell them. I'm just working out how it will flow on some of these new rules. And this comes back to also around grazing, winter grazing. I discussed it yesterday in a meeting yesterday about having quite an interesting discussion with an industry that were saying that they are seeing some farmers throwing the rules out around winter grazing, and we really need to reiterate while we're doing that, they're actually letting the whole community down, because we've come so far to sort of get the good management practice, even as a base. So I'm just trying to make sure that language is actually reasonably forceful. And, you know, if they think that the government's thrown all the rules around, they can talk to the MPs and get their fines. So that might be a good way of certain, but we need to actually really, you know, be quite blunt about it, because a lot of people are doing good stuff. If someone takes one person not doing it, will be on the front page of the whatever news. So we just need to really force that issue a wee bit as these rules are sort of playing out.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm happy, as I said, I'm happy to take all of that back and we can work on some messaging.
All good.
Councillor, did you have a question? You keep looking at me.
Yeah, I do, actually, gravel monitoring. My phone hasn't been red hot, but I've had about 4 people ring and say that on their consents, and they didn't read it, obviously, that they had to put in a return monthly, whether they were taking gravel or not. To me, that seems sort of onerous. Wouldn't it be better to have it on the consents that when they do take gravel, they become in contact and say how much? Because it must be an administrative problem in here too, to have those things coming in every month from every gravel extraction consent.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that there is an upside to that data coming through every month where we know none has been taken, because then we know none has been taken. If we get no data in for that month, we don't know whether they've extracted and just not told us, or that they've not taken any. So there is an upside to having that in, even though it is administration heavy. But I'm happy to take it back and check, because at the moment it is a condition on the consent. Yeah, so they do need to adhere to that.
Chairman Hall.
It's just that following on from Jeremy's comments about winter grazing, with the new plan being ratified, obviously there'll be existing use rights for this winter, but a lot of people probably won't realise that Bailage on grass is also captured by our rule, which wasn't by the national regs, that you've got to take the same care, and it'll be through this winter before that's actually enacted. But it's another publicity thing I think we're going to have to get out there, is a lot of people went that way because they thought they were out of the regulations. Well, they're not on their plan. So
It's an important point.
Just, it's only 43 to 50 bales per hectare. It's not
Well,
much.
the casual listener to the radio or a reader of the newspaper would have the impression the government have abandoned the winter grazing rules
Correct.
and that they no longer apply, which is not true. They may have intentions to do things in the future, but nothing has been done, nothing has changed. And so the winter grazing rules still apply within the southern region. And we have a water and land plan approved now, off with it. So people are obliged to follow that.
I think, Mr. Chairman, you're right in saying that, because the narrative for a long time has been a narrative of unworkable rules, and that's been plastered over the top of winter grazing in the south. And so I think we're here talking about some upfront solutions to front load those communications, to make sure we don't get into the middle of that winter and find that we have a lot of non-compliance. So
Could I make a suggestion that obviously Fed's here is receiving with the information we're hearing, that we really we need to engage with them in some form and clearly state where everything is. So it's up to them, because they are very much Feds certainly have said that will not stand with people that are doing bad behaviour. So we need to use that as we'll make sure they know all the rules, very clear. They can communicate it to their members, beef and lamb, to the area NZ, so that nobody can really say, oh, we didn't know, oh, we thought, because it's going backwards if we're, they need to know. I'm just trying to really reinforce that, get the comms, and it's not like, oh, we'll do that in a couple of weeks. Let's bang water and land plans done. Next week they should know exactly what's going on. It's hugely important.
Can I just support what you've just said? Thanks, Mr. Chairman, what Jeremy's just said. And like most times, I'll probably take it a bit far, but I'll just say, would it be a consideration on what we were at the Federated Farmers AGM last week, and they did stress that about winter grazing in Southland, that they won't be tolerating non-compliance, and that they will call it out. I think were the words where they say it. Maybe some sort of joint communication and really, it may not happen, but I'm just suggesting, and it's not about either one of our groups or organisations, it's about supporting the change on the ground. So that's just a suggestion anyway, which shows some unity, and it could be carefully curated, that message, to really install that type of localism that we're here on ourselves. This is about Southland, and we need to do this together not saying that we're doing anything, but continually supporting the change. It's just something to think about.
Nice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I just endorse what all the other councillors are saying about the publicity. Tell people that our plan, I mean, there was a release yesterday about the plan being operative, and that's good, and that all of these things do apply, and that this message needs to go out constantly so that everybody knows that they still have to comply with all of these things. That's very important. Do we need a resolution or something from this meeting to that effect? Or?
I think the intention of the meeting is quite plain from the council as a whole. I would think Paul will, I'm sure, will communicate with Tom's team better. I don't think a resolution is so much as a requirement for the manager to get onto the comms.
Through you, Mr. Chair, clearly captured in the minutes. Clearly, it's very clear the sentiment of the committee. You can be assured that there is and continue to be plans to communicate effectively all year round. Not lost on me. The communication around the plan yesterday. It would make sense to follow that up quite promptly around intensive winter grazing as well. So I think that's a conversation that Donna and I and the regulatory team will have with comms. You can be assured that we'll be using not just our standard media approaches, but we've got a regulatory newsletter that we deliver. We'll have Facebook, and I think also there's been last week, I think there was some radio. As well.
It'd be quite good to do a joint to get them, Nickel and Jason and everybody standing in a winter crop paddock of their
unity
and say, this, what I'm saying, there are rules here, people, everybody. And I'd be disappointed if the other stakeholders didn't turn up. I know they might not necessarily 100% agree with certain aspects, but it's actually saying, just make sure nothing's gone away, government sorting their stuff out, but about the water and land plan too. So it'd be nice to see that visual.
I think it's a good idea. We are currently putting ads out at the moment on a lot of the farming publications. Once the LGD is out of the way, that would probably be quite a good one. We can have the President of Federated Farmers standing beside me and we're on the same page. I'm very happy to do that.
Needs to be asked, certainly.
Can I just ask, Donna, going back to your report, did you have any serious non-compliance as a result of the aerial inspections?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did have two which we believed were significant non-compliances, which were ground truthed. One turned out to not be an issue, or one turned out to be quite a significant issue, which we're going on the process.
Thank you. And I mentioned the gravel takes by contractors, are they?
All those individual farmers have to do it too.
Yeah. But it is important that we know when gravel is taken or when it is not, because we're being required to manage gravel burdens in our rivers.
Mr. Chairman, I've just got another couple if I may.
I'm sorry, let's just quickly hold things up. Is there anything you can inform the community around the eel? There's an investigation that obviously the community is asking, is a process still working through it? And I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm just saying, what can we tell the community? Because people do ask what's going on there. It's quite a major.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was a major incident and I acknowledge that there's a lot of public interest and a desire to know an outcome. But all I can assure people at the moment is we are actively working through that process. We are coming towards the end of a process. And so it's probably more important than ever just to buy our time at the moment and make sure we're making the right assessments and decisions. And as soon as we can say something publicly, I should
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the winter grazing in relation to using baleage or the sacrifice paddocks, are they being investigated as to what effects that they are having, whether or not they are having, bad adverse effects, or and whether or not any changes to practices, like we've had the winter grazing, started off with people doing it not very well, and then we had some research which showed ways that could be done better, and that's been implemented by a lot of people. The baleage on pasture is relatively new, and certainly the sacrifice paddocks are relatively new as far as I know. What do we know about the effects of those, whether they're better than conventional winter grazing, or whether there's extra steps we need to take to make sure that they don't have adverse effects?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we were called to a couple of incidents last year which were grass and bale, and none of those had environmental effects at the time. So we're taking this season to collect a little bit more data, and I'm happy to report back after the season and let you know what the outcome of any incidents we're called to are.
Okay, and the sacrifice paddocks?
We haven't had any environmental issues with them at this stage. Again, it's a reasonably new season, so we can assess that this year.
So what happened, sorry, Mr. Chairman, what happens on a sacrifice paddock?
Not the answer there.
Yes, Jeremy.
What is the definition of this? So looking over the consent,
That's in the legislation.
obviously you asked that yesterday, Morris. And usually sacrifice paddocks is usually one that it's not common, I suppose. But is it like having a sweet paddock and have the paddock next door? Is that right? When it gets bad, or are you talking? That's what I would say.
It's not new at all.
We're just going to trash that paddock when it's wet.
It was a widely done practice, I remember, all through winter grazing when I was younger. You would run the hoggers. This was before electric fencing. You couldn't shift the
That was
fence.
the old determination
You
on
would
the
move them
sacrifice.
to the next year's Swede paddock. So it's not a new concept at all.
Sacrifice paddock is another meaning.
Can I ask Lacey?
Oh, sorry,
to,
say nothing.
We're telling you practical what it means.
In the plan.
Youth manager may have some light to shed on this.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we totally acknowledge the working out what is pasture wintering, what is sacrifice paddocks, etc. So work is being done on fact sheets to help explain the definitions, to help explain to people whether or not they require to get consent or not get consent because they can be compliant with the permitted activity criteria, and further they explain what the actual risks that we're actually trying to manage are. So in the plan, and I will quote, sacrifice paddock means an area on which stock are temporarily contained, typically during extended periods of wet weather, and the resulting damage caused to the soil by pugging is so severe as to require resowing with pasture species.
An interesting one.
It's already been defined, so let's not try and redefine it.
But hang on, management practices, if you're going to sacrifice a paddock, it's going to get regrassed at any rate, because that's why you do it. So I don't know that that's all going to work, but a year will come through.
Yeah.
And can I make a suggestion that maybe if you contact the Makarewa catchment group, there's a guy in there called Nigel, and last winter they ran a whole lot of trials on different wintering systems and how things went and how things came out. And that might help us in Environment South and understand what is going on. And some of the things they found were contrary to general belief as far as damage and and runoff and things went by their management systems.
Yeah.
So thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate from that description, Maisie, that is not a new concept. So it was done many years ago before we had electric fencing, and I remember doing it, but it was with hoggets and young stock were the only thing we used to have on fodder crops. So it's not, it may, it's a different context now, as we know, but it's something that some people probably not mostly are familiar with, let's be honest now.
And the permitted activity criteria goes further to assist in, so it talks about the amount of time it's actually used over the certain period, that it's not an growth crop, that doesn't exceed a certain percentage of the area. So it's not everything, but it's
Some guidelines.
Jeremy,
I was just going to say, but is that description in the, you're saying there's not a definition in the water and land plan?
Oh, no, but Lacey's reading that out.
Is that
Somewhere.
I was saying you're,
Yeah.
don't know what you're saying, Morris.
That's right.
Yeah, it is defined.
The list
It
of
is defined.
definitions, but it is there somewhere.
Now, Bruce, did you have some helpful advice?
Oh, I think Tria's just going to say, as Councillor Don commented, that the concept is not a completely new one. Probably in terms of the queries about effects probably come down to is obviously not seeing or experiencing significant issues at this stage, but obviously something we need to keep focusing on. The effects are probably going to some extent be dictated on where people choose to do it and making sensible calls around that. And there might be some opportunities to flesh out some comms on that aspect of it. If there's, so over this season, obvious situations where sacrifice paddocks are having adverse effects, then we might be able to frame some comms around that and try and promote some best practice. There we go.
just a point on that quickly through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Robley, the definition is actually, for some reason, listed in Part C of Appendix N.
Right,
To sacrifice.
that's where it is, yeah.
I suspect those are the paddocks that will attract the observers who are looking for bad practice and taking aerial shots showing these paddocks that have been ripped up. They're the ones that are intended to be resown. Chairman Hall.
Just to give you a slightly different perspective on it, I think they're actually, if we have a wet patch, I will still put my hoggets on a tough old dry hill paddock. And I think it's actually a very good environmental effect. You're not hugging them up, but it's somewhere you can feed a bit of hay and wait till the weather conditions. Now with the slope rules, most of us have crop on heavy, pretty flat paddocks. So actually, I'm not too concerned unless we see something that's out of kilter. That's, I think it's actually good practice. It's actually for animal health, visually and everything else. If you get a weather event, and we always get them, is to have somewhere else to go. And normally it's a tough old paddock that's not going to pack up anyway.
I think there's two tracks here. There's the sheep farmers and how they operate.
Yeah.
And the secondly is how the dairy farmers use it. The sacrifice paddocks in the dairy farming situation are often in the autumn where they feed out a lot of supplementary feed maybe, and also in the spring where they're calving.
Thank you, Austin. I just have one query on a high rate water consent. We've got low flower trigger levels. What's? I presume it's low flow.
Yes, just low flow.
I had to read that twice before. Right, are there any more questions or commentary around?
The recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Seconded by Alistair. Thank you.
Just make sure the presence is on.
Thank you, Don.
Thanks.
9.2 is the group program update. Again, Don.
Yeah, and Bruce, and I'll just remind the council before Bruce and Donna just provide an update. This is your work programme in terms of you get your substantive reports for every quarter, but this is an opportunity for you to to get additional regulatory information, and Bruce and Donna will take you through that. It is also an opportunity, I suppose, to if there are any specific topics that you want us to consider as part of the work programme as you go through your year, this is the opportunity to ask those questions. But I'll hand over to Bruce and Donna.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the annual compliance monitoring and enforcement priorities, we recently had a workshop with the councillors to get some feedback on those, and I just wanted to let you know I'm currently drafting a paper to bring that back to council to confirm what the priorities are for the coming year.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just some further expansion on some focus areas at the moment around the regulatory framework that I'm involved with. A key focus at the moment is around our delegations register and delegations processes. Through some recent court situations at the pointy end of the enforcement process, there's been some very robust legal dissection of councils, the collective councils, delegated authorities to do certain things. So they come under intense scrutiny when things get to the court as to whether the officer that undertook a particular action had the appropriate delegation to do so, whether the delegation was lawful. And in particular, there's been a strong focus in situations where a chief executive or a senior officer has been seen to sub-delegate an RMA function to someone else, which is sort of a legal no-no. So we're doing some work around our delegations menu, make sure it could withstand legal scrutiny. It's really important when you get to the pointy end of regulatory processes, if you need to go there. It's not saying that's where you go from the first point of call, but if formal action is required, the delegation process comes under a lot of scrutiny. So we're doing some organisation-wide work on that at the moment. Second thing I was going to mention, we have an entity called the Enforcement Recommendation Panel, which used to be called the Enforcement Decision Panel, but has morphed into a recommending body rather than a decision-making body. And we're looking to broaden that out and have that available more widely across the regulatory functions. Essentially what that body does is try and, I guess, use the power of the team. Several of us have had quite a bit of involvement in enforcement processes over the years at District Court, High Court, etc., and have the scar tissue that goes with that. So trying to bring that, pull that knowledge into looking at a particular action that we may be contemplating, trying to make sure that it's calibrated at the appropriate level, having regard to our policies and our compliance policies that are out on our website, etc. And also make sure that the action is the most appropriate way to get the outcome that we're looking for. And what that group does is then make a recommendation through to the officer, which is usually Donna. So please be assured we're not seeking to undermine Donna's authority, or if it's a prosecution matter, it needs to go through to Wilma for a decision. But it's a chance to sort of bat around the issues and look at the approach that's proposed, make sure it's sensible and calibrated at the right level, and in particular, sometimes put a bit of a black hat on and see if there's obvious gaps or deficiencies in the process that would undermine things if it went further, and that's really important. So we're looking to broaden that group out. It's been mainly focused around consents and compliance related work at the moment, but it's got the scope to be broadened out to the whole suite of our regulatory functions. I have drafted a muffin talk on this. Donna's given me some good feedback, so just in the process of finalising that. I'll send you an invite to that. We're hoping to do that within the next month or so. There's some other things that we're working on sort of in the background, working closely with Marcus Roy around the fast track processes, which obviously, depending on how it lands and when it lands, could have significant implications for the consents and resource management teams. And another longer term matter is around, in the regulatory framework, there's a considerable amount of content around future-proofing our workforce and how we can effectively grow our staff. It's very challenging at the moment to recruit around senior consenting and resource management functions, so there may be an opportunity to develop those internally through a cadet type scheme. That takes quite a bit of time and effort for teams that are already quite busy, but could be a good long-term option when there's a lot of competition for workforce. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Bruce, I'm having trouble framing this a little bit, but what are the type of people that you have on your advisory group? I don't want to know who, but what's their background?
Yeah, I'll explain that. I'll flesh it out in the muff and talk, but usually we have individual officer, mostly our investigators, George Gerrica and Brendan Parker, who are bringing matters that they've investigated through to the panel. The panel core members are Mr. Holmes, myself, and Graham McKenzie, who I'm sure you all know. He's one of our most senior staff, has been here for over 40 years and has a lot of experience in the compliance space. So there's ourselves. Donna is part of the group, but because she's often the decision maker, she's sitting slightly outside that recommendation process, because she has to make the eventual decision and or the eventual recommendation through to our chief executive. So what we're normally trying to do through dialogue is bring our respective perspectives to the matter and make a recommendation.
So at the top of, and above that is the decision-making panel. The decision maker is often Donna, who has a lot of delegated authority around that. If things are moving through to a prosecution process, then the chief executive is involved. Thank you.
In the space there for a community view on that with a councillor or a regulatory committee sitting alongside that panel. Would that be any help at all?
Specifically told we can't.
Yeah.
Saying in the past we did.
Just to explain that through you, Mr. Chairman, certainly understand the potential value of that. The Auditor General and a few others have made some comments about the need to keep enforcement decisions discreet from elected representative involvement right along. That's the advice that's been provided.
You don't want to go there either.
Yeah, but we're not part of the final process. So yeah, but anyway, it is what it is. Yep.
I guess at a higher level, though, you are part of the framing of the policy framework. Like Southland's compliance policy goes through a regular review with elected representative input, so you have the opportunity to set or calibrate that policy at that stage.
Judge, slight comment.
I'm just slightly surprised there's no legal representation in there, and that must come in when it gets closer to the pointy end.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. At the pointy end, we always get legal advice, and like legal advice is advice and an opinion. It's not the decision, but you sort of disregard it at your peril. And one of the things that we always seek to do is make sure that if a particular action is proposed to be undertaken, that the legal advice supports that. And most councils who have some sort of body, different councils do this in a different way. Some of them actually have the panel making the decision, and others have more of a recommending type approach. But that's almost always a risk mitigation measure, is to obtain legal advice, which is not perfect. You know, I mean, I'm sure some of the councils who've had outcomes they probably weren't looking for had taken legal advice as well. So there's always an opposing legal view, but certainly obtaining that legal input is important.
Yeah, just quickly, you mentioned compliance policy. Obviously, the question I was going back, sort of teasing back out to the inspections and things, how do we work with the community? Is that all involved in that compliance policy, which as governors we've said, well, this is the policy you've got to work under? Does that, so I was just trying to work out where the track is to say, why do we do the way we do things? That'll be based on that part. Obviously, the RMA rules from the government, but from a governance perspective, we were saying, hey, we want to look at how we interact with the community and things.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we do have a monitoring policy as well as an enforcement policy, and it's due for review come July this year into the new financial year, and that's reviewed usually triannually.
So it will be, that's this year?
Yeah.
So just further to that, our policy framework provides for a range of approaches. So, you know, generally speaking, I mean, I'm slightly biased, but I think Donna and the team are doing a really good job of working through the suite of options available. So certainly not gravitating to not run into the inspection instantaneously. It's how do you get the outcome you're looking for in the most appropriate way. Sometimes that's education, and that's quite often the starting point, and that mostly is successful. And then things, if they need to escalate, they escalate from there.
Rather than asking really after the inspection timing and things like that. That's just understanding what the policy you're working to how, is it a difficult decision, is it easy to do that? But we'll look at it in due course anyway, so.
Through you, Mr Chair, that's part of the reason we took it on this line, was to do that. And now that we've agreed, we'll look to implement that into the policy.
Thank you. Now that, any further discussion on the program? Thank you. Seconded by Peter. Thank you. All those in favour? No. Anyone against? The 9.3 on the agenda is the biosecurity and regulatory report. Quarter 3.
Through you, Chair, I'll take us through this. Ali Mead isn't available today, so if there are any questions that you ask that I can't answer, be assured we will come back, but I'll take the report as read. As you know, this report really just provides updates of any exemptions that are currently underway in terms of biosecurity. You've got information there pertaining to clean vessel passes as well, and the numbers relating to that. And it just outlines some of the really important regulatory work that the biosecurity team update. I'll take the report as read, and if there are any questions, I'll attempt to answer them. There's a panel of people at the back that may be able to assist also, but if, like I say, if I can't answer them, we will come back.
So I had three points that I've noted on this one. The clean vessel reports, does that require a driver to check the hulls of those vessels leaving Bluff before they go into Florida? Is that the kind of inspection that we do?
I know in terms of, through you, Chair, in terms of in order to determine, divers do check the hulls of vessels because that's part of the work that they do in Fiordland and other areas. In terms of leaving Bluff, I don't believe that that's done as a process of leaving areas like Bluff. But part of the regulatory check is to ensure that the vessels have the clean vessel paperwork on board as well as part of our work. I believe that to be true, but I will get a little bit more detail for you at a later date.
Why have we only got 383 rabbits in the district? I'm sure I could count more than that.
The exempt ones.
Yeah,
Supposed to be special fluffy black one.
That's just round our place.
So the rabbits relate to the Southland Pest Eradication Society area, and they have a particular arrangement in terms of how that's rated. So in order for the landowners to be compliant with the regional pest management plan, they need to have an exemption, because for everybody else in the region, management of rabbits is the landowner responsibility. So that accounts for 383 landowners that will have an exemption that work is undertaken by
That's landowners, not
landowners.
rabbits.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's a good answer. Jeremy.
Just in regards to those clean vessel passes, when we've got 7 that haven't got it, are they sort of, is there instant fines for that sort of thing, or is it just a sort it out?
Yeah, I believe, and I will again double check this, I believe there's a notification that left on the vessel that instantaneously, and I think that like our normal compliance, it can be escalated up to more enforcement action. I'm not sure there's an instantaneous fine, but I will check. I think usually it's a letter of notification and warning, and with a certain amount of time to rectify. But I will go back and confirm.
All vessels, in my view, in my simple mind, mean every vessel, including those that go in by boats on trailers. Is that correct? Is my interpretation correct? Or is it only boats that actually steam around?
Well, this report talks about the boats who are leaving Bluff to go into Fiordland.
Yeah,
The
but yeah,
boats that are over in Fiordland is a different.
yeah, but there are also boats that come from your street and go into Free Fiordland.
Yeah, they are mentioned somewhere in the report.
I think they're not all be required to have it, but I will check.
Thank you.
Well, I think they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, that brings up an issue which I've raised before, that we don't have the resource or the facility to examine every boat that goes into Fiordland. We can't spend enough time over there. We haven't got a liveaboard boat. We haven't got a permanent presence.
Well, we've only got 3 people involved in there.
And of course, the trailer boats are reasonably low risk because, they've been out of the water. And, I don't think we've found any that have actually had that issue so far. It's normally the ones that have been moored in Bluff, where we know we've got some nasties that we don't want to be waterland, so, yeah.
Doing that in area, it grows on the hulls of boats that are left in the water.
And we're going to have
the ones that are out. It's like the ones where we're trying to stop Didymo spreading. We have been ineffectual at, haven't we, Morris? By keeping the trailer boat hulls clean. It's the same sort of situation. If they're out of the water, they don't build up those pests.
No, I understand.
Okay. Councillor Ludlow, did you like to say?
Yeah, actually it follows on from Councillor Gibson's question, particularly about the small boats, and a strange segue relates to Chairman Horrell's advocacy for point of sale information about burners, replacement burners in houses. But actually, when people buy these small vessels, have we considered actually making sure that that information is part of their boat purchase, that their clean vessel pass end? Because actually that would be really simple. And I know you say that the small vessels are not quite so risky, but actually what we're hearing is there's a whole lot of those trailers being parked up in various parts of Fiordland. So I just wonder if that's something that would be a practical kind of information sharing option, or whether it's completely off-piste.
It could be, it will be part of presence at the boat show as well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
not all boats are bought from dealers. Probably.
No, but that's at least.
A lot of them are just private sales.
Yeah.
But you're right, an education program is probably what you're talking about.
Nail it to the bridge or whatever you call it.
Peter, you want to say something? No?
Through Mr. Chairman, I've got a fairly minimalistic knowledge in this area, so I may not be able to help too much, but just was picking up on your own point. I am aware that Ali and her team have an ongoing presence at South Linden at the boat show and promoting the clean vessel pass. The pass is required for all vessels, and as you make the point, they don't only come from Bluff, particularly with some tuna running and things in Milford area. Last couple of years have been a lot of recreational boats coming in through Milford, probably far more than has been previously. And those standards still apply. People can apply for the pass online. There is a clean hull standard. I'm not aware that it requires each vessel to undertake a diving, but certainly the standard is specified as part of the application process. And it's an ongoing focus that comes up regularly at the Fiordland Marine Guardians meetings. So I'm sure we can round up some more specific information for you, but certainly it is a requirement for all vessels.
It's difficult to get through to everybody because if you watch the fishing show on the television, they bring boats down from Northland and the North Island to come and fish for tuna and dive for crayfish in Fiordland. So they bring boats in from all over the country. So, our risk increases. There are hundreds of private boats going to Fiordland every year. And that's where I say we don't have the facility, the resource to actually manage that properly. So it's an ongoing risk.
We're going to have it by August.
We'll get a new boat shortly and we'll be right.
No, we'll get our bunding area by August.
All right. So
Can't live on that one though, councillor.
can I just ask about the people who've got Bengal cats? Do we know that they've still got them? Do we ever check? Have they escaped or been sold on?
I think
Social media about Bengal cats.
yeah, as I understand it, I do think there is an ongoing check-in, but I couldn't today tell you that time frame. So we'll take that away and
Okay.
clarify that. Yeah.
Okay, so there's the Vice Security and Regulatory Report. And
Happy to move the recommendation, Mr Chair.
thank you, Chairman Hall. Second for that, Councillor McPhail. All those in favour of that recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Carried, thank you. Consent Division report for quarter 3 with Lacey.
Only lives in your neighbourhood. So it's a big. No.
For you, Mr Chair, I will take the report as read. I'll provide a couple of summary points and a couple of updates. With regard to general team resourcing, you've seen the report, we're in the midst of recruiting another round of a replacement consent officer and replacement principal officer. So that's currently underway. The consents team, it notes we remain 100% compliant with processing timeframes, with everything assigned and no backlog, which is great. Continued support from external consultants to assist with that. Remains in place where necessary, and as noted in there, we are staying across the developments and pending fast track legislation, and equally aware the importance of ensuring we are adequately resourced should we find ourselves with a whole lot more to process. A couple of updates on the active appeals that we have in play at the moment. Whilst they are still in process, the Cable Grove Limited application, which was to establish a new dairy farm at Tarset Creek, was one that was declined in August 2023. We have been through the mediation process and parties have been required to report just recently that report may remain. So positive dialogue has occurred and the matter still remains before the court at the moment. So we should be hearing in the next 4 to 6 weeks what to say about that. The Pāhia Dairies animal welfare case that we have under appeal at the moment. So that was the consents that were granted in October 2023, and the Animal Law Association appealed that decision, and on the basis of the effect of intensive winter grazing on the welfare of the dairy cows. We have had a development in that. We are following the government's announcement on the intention to repeal the intensive grazing regulations. The applicant has applied to surrender that part of the current consents whilst the appeal is ongoing. There has been a teleconference with parties and it has been agreed that there is no substantive issue to determine at this point. That is required to go through the process for applications for costs and allow time for that to be done, and at which point we're expecting probably June, by the time it gets around, that the court will finalise the appeal on the basis there is likely no issue to be determined because it is not in play any longer. So the applicant has confirmed that they will undertake their intensive winter grazing activity for 2024 in line with the permitted activity criteria, local regulations and plan.
The animal rights group that submitted to that application have done that in a number of places across the country, not just down here. It makes interesting reading.
So those are the updates on those ones. I am.
We're open for questions. Can I just ask the ministerial approval of the Coast Plan Change 5? Has that come through yet?
I have not seen that. I've not seen that confirmed.
Do you, we or us, whichever way you want to put it, have the capability of whipping through, I think it's 38 consents are sitting in limbo on our Matera irrigation systems?
There has been a lot of further work that has gone into the water conservational work. We are at a point very shortly, we hope to have an update to you by this meeting, however, it will be the next meeting, that we've got a meeting set down for in 2 weeks' time, at the end of May. The idea is, the idea is that all parties who have agreed to different numbers in order to collectively reduce the allocation and have us compliant with the water conservation order, that they get their new consent conditions essentially to sign off. And following there's one consent holder who is doing some investigation work, i.e. putting down a bore, to try and assist with closing off the last piece of reducing the stream depletion to the required amount. So there's a lot going on, and we actually feel like we are very much near the end of the line.
But my question is, do we have the capabilities to deal with those 38 consents coming in bang? In other words, they should come to you somewhere around about the 1st of June.
So what we are in the system actually, so we've got the list of reviews that are out, which is fine, but actually since 2018 onwards, people, as they have been able to and as they have wanted to, have applied to replace their application. So we actually have most of the information already lined up.
Okay.
I just maybe suggest, Lacey, that if the conclusion of this work happens before the next regulatory committee, there may be another committee that we can just bring that to council's attention, just as I think it's important that we don't not stopping the fact that it would still get reported to the regular committee, but I think if it happens sooner than that, I think I'd just encourage you to select another committee and, you know, that we could update council on.
Yes, Jeremy.
We're something the cost of these consents, the variations and that. I thought, is that still the case? Was that the discussion? Was it? Someone can clarify.
We are paying for the consultants who are working across the space, yes. The replacement applications would have been coming in to be replaced in any case. It is literally just the number in which that will go onto those consents that will be changed.
Okay. Yeah. No.
So it's sort of a hybrid.
If it's different from when we first started.
So this outcome was a major achievement, really. And the number of consents that
clarifying the process that, you know, we're got to process them, but we're actually fronting some of those costs that we've got to be seen given that.
To a degree, anything that we are working on that doesn't have a replacement application in play. So if I'm just working on your consent and we're ending up with a change, that will come from us. Yes.
There's a change to the consent.
there was a number of consents which you're aware of, which required resolution by the council. And we could have used the legislative or the regulatory process to do that. But the owners of those consents were asked to get together and try and reach an agreement. It's taken a long time, but to me that's a major plus for us and for them if they can reach an agreement amongst themselves about the future allocation of water resources in that area. So I think we've made a huge amount of progress without having to go to court.
And I think
dialogue on it, and it's greatly assisted us in identifying improvements that can be made here and there, things to do with water measuring, etc.
I think, to be fair, it's worked really well. We as consent holders, sorry, I'm one of them, we've put in 164,000
The conflict
make
that you
it-
hadn't read.
No, I'm not now
No,
because
it's not
they've
now.
thrown me out.
Yeah.
So we put as the consent holders,
Yeah.
put in 164,000, but I'll guarantee ES has probably put in 3, 4 or 5 times that.
So cheaper than reviewing all the consents and going to court over it.
I understand, but it is
And-
costly.
And achieving an agreed result is not.
And I'll reiterate what the chair is saying, that there's been a stakeholder, working with a stakeholder and trying to come with an outcome that's with the regulator, and so it could be something that certainly into the future, this is gonna probably may pop up again, and we can learn a lot from it. So it's been a really good, exciting, taken longer, but it's gone there, it's getting there, it's great.
Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, just want to ask a question about the fast tracking process, and it's a hot topic at the moment, and the key criteria around it, as I understand, is what is of national importance. Is there regional importance in there too? And because my question is that we've seen over the years, it's an extremely high bar to increase herd size in dairy farming production in the region. Do you expect that there could be a case made, or someone might test through that process that we've come to know that that may not be the case in the future? While that portal's open?
Through you, Mr. Chair, anything is possible. Councillor McDonald, I do think, yeah, well, anything is possible for people to test that in that space. It will be interesting to see the parameters that come out in the legislation with regard to what is regionally significant and what constitutes the nationally significant.
See some people lining up that think that they are of national importance. So yes, I just sort of put it out there that this environment around this stuff could change pretty quickly.
We don't know the answers yet because the legislation hasn't been approved. We've all made submissions.
Just as we're aware of it and we're thinking about those future risks. Yeah.
Councillor Gibson.
I think actually this is just a comment then, where dairy farms are limited by area at the moment. Now, and some of them want to increase their area of milking, but hold it down numbers, so the effluent or the effects of the dairy are not increased at all. In fact, somewhat reduced.
Somewhat. We have been seeing quite a few applications of that nature in the consent stream, and the particular triggers within the National Environment Standards for Freshwater and the proposed Southland Water and Land Plan helpfully, I suppose, sort of track along the same route, but it's none of those to date have been declined.
Thank you.
It's just on that last question, I'm not sure it's so much the fast track, but if Shane Jones is basically wanting to roll over all the aquaculture consents, that could naturally follow that without the ability to upgrade conditions, then that could flow and affect people saying, well, it's good enough for aquaculture. So it's something we've got to keep watching. Now, the NES that restricts number of eggs for cows or land area, does that expire at the end of this year or not? Somebody was saying that it does have an expiry date. Is that
So
correct?
Regulation 25 within those regulations discusses the revocation of regulations 15 onwards, which includes the conversion of dairy farmland, the irrigation of dairy farmland, new dairy farmland, sorry, the use of dairy support land throughout. So 1st of January 2025 is as it's listed, those would be revoked.
Thank you. We have, coming back to the announcements, pronouncements by ministers, this council has made submissions to both of the intentions, and we're waiting to hear what happens, so we're just waiting.
And I just want a clarification, so Ted, I don't know why that government, obviously it was farm plans, or there was other things going to regulate that. But effectively, you're saying that the use of having putting a dairy cow, land use change, putting a cow on doesn't necessarily focus on dairy farming as such, on those regulations. You say that they're actually will actually drop off.
So
There's nothing coming back it up.
I would be unsure
Yeah.
to comment on that at this point, but
At this stage, there's nothing, those actually regulations
they are
disappear.
temporary
They are
regulations
temporary.
for regarding intensification.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just to get a point of clarification, but our water plan rules still apply.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you can't intensify use on land unless you can show that it has less or the same effect as before.
You mustn't take the focus off dairy. Don't like not focus, but they particularly think about dairy, having a dairy cow on a I'm not, we don't need to dwell on it today, but it's something interesting to have a look. There are still rules, intensification rules, and there's and those things will come into play. But it's very they were picking on dairy industry
Yeah,
as
just
such.
intensification, I think, isn't it?
So the land and water plan has been made operative.
Yeah.
Majority of it as of yesterday. So and that can be more stringent than what the government planned for them.
The change
So
was,
people will have to make themselves aware of those.
you do have a lot of beef cows, but dairy cows were a different story.
We won't
Dairy
debate.
cow. So that's what I'm saying. There's
We've done that debate before.
yeah, that's
Um,
that's what I'm saying. That you put one cow on the place, and all of a sudden the rules change. Dairy cow, black and white, but you can have beef cows as good as gold. So that's
Mr. Chairman, so just to be clear, a potential fast track process cannot cut across our we don't know.
I would say no, I think you probably find that it can.
Yeah.
Because of the legislative decision.
Okay, just that's could be a potential, could be a risk that we need to maybe think about, but who knows?
So through you, Mr. Chair, that the current, the previous fast, well, current fast track legislation, we, to bring our lens through, to bring our regional lens through, the comments that we provide are in line with our plans. So it still is incorporated, but may not be
Based on.
the test. That's still based on our impact. Because it's an
Sure. I just want to make one quick comment. I've just been given a literature review saying that the actual piss dropping out, the nitrogen out of it, is now deemed to be 6.7 kilograms per hectare per year, not the 1,000 as it was. So in de-intensification can come from lots of areas. And if this is accepted, which there's no reason there's proper scientists have done the job, then the rules can change. Not the rules can change, but we can fit more in or do something else. Sorry, Morris.
I'm completely lost with that.
I'll send you the literature review.
Yeah, okay. That's good.
Okay, thank you. Lacey, did you have any further?
Just a quick clarification on the point Councillor McPhail regarding the farming activities previously. So just to ensure we're all on the same page, that Rule 20, the land use rule for farming in the South Moreland land, does include, there's essentially a couple of parts to it, right? Are you over 20 hectares? Or do you do a farm, which has some provisions, and then the next part, it is basically all other farming. So it is captured, the farming activities are captured in there, and the permitted activity criteria is to have and maintain a certified environment management plan.
Yeah, look, I'm not disagreeing with what I'm saying, but obviously this is influence from central government too. I'm just interested in how the RMA is going to cross these things off, I suppose. That's what I was asking. It's been implemented into plans and things like that.
Thank you. Thank you, Lacey. Are there any further questions or commentary about the consent division report item 4.4? If not, somebody like to make a recommendation, please. Second of Morris. All in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you, Lacey, for your very full report and excellent answers. Now, 9.5 is the appointment of hearing commissioners, and both Councillor Ludlow and I are liable to be involved in this. I've asked Jeremy if he would manage that part of the meeting for us, please.
Would you like me to leave the room, Chairman? I don't mind.
No, I don't think
Comfortable to do that.
we just need to declare that we have an interest and that we're not going to vote.
We're quite evident.
We want to
Well,
do
while I'm
that.
here.
Tell it to your
Fantastic.
face if you want. No, all good. So we'll go to 9.5 and in regards to the Blue Skies Meridian and Environment South and Division hearings. And Lacey, are you going to do this?
Yes, I'll just quickly, thank you. So I'll take the report as read. It's pretty self-explanatory, I would agree. With the Meridian application, as an example, we have had a request from the applicant that it is independent decision making. So applicants have the ability to do that under the RMA, under section 108 RMA. So we have sought a two persons, Mr. Ludlow, to hear and determine that application. There are quite a few submissions on that application. We are working through the next steps with the applicant on whether the entire process is held at the minute, or we're expecting to hopefully get through to a hearing perhaps by June, we're hoping. So it's easier to schedule something down when you actually know the state of play. Unlike, I suppose, the next one, which is it's an Environment Southland application. So obviously we're recommending an independent decision maker who is Alan Cubitt in this instance to at some point hear and determine those. The hearing has not yet been laid down. There is work still continuing with the applicant and submitters. And on the Blue Sky Meets application, that is a little bit similar at the moment, that we're just working through some further information with the applicant. We have a meeting next week to be able to then write up our report and determine the way forward as to whether there will be a hearing required. If not, the intention is that the independent persons still decide the application, whether that be in the papers or not.
Okay. Good. Is there any questions, Morris?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I notified earlier that I'm a submitter, which I think for the Meridian consent through the Waia Working Party, which does maybe is a bit of a conflict there with Lyndall being on it as well. I don't know what you think about that. The other thing about the Meridian consent, the report says the environmental effects associated with these activities have been robustly assessed in their application and it will be appropriately managed. I'm not sure if that's appropriate to have those comments in this report, because we don't, while I'd agree that it's robustly assessed, that the whether it will be appropriately managed or not is yet to be seen. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm a bit concerned about that statement being there. The other thing about the appointment of commissioners, this might sound a little bit selfish, but it's not intended to be. we do have 3 other councillors who have done the accreditation program. And I wonder when, and I am one of them, but Phil Morrison and Paul Evans are the other 2. I wonder whether those people will get an opportunity at some stage, hopefully they will, to practice their learnings.
Sorry, give myself a finger. Yeah, on the chair, you gotta look at me now. Compare. I got the
Talking, okay from here.
Just in regards to that, like even, Morris, I'm just trying to work out your conflict of interest when you're questioning panel, like, just to be clear, I know
Well, no, that is right, but I
that
think
you're submitting to this too,
I
so
am, but I want,
sort of vindicating who should be on the,
no, I'm not saying that, I'm
just
just
sort of
saying.
challenging the thing, so I'm just trying to just make sure we're all very clear and transparent. I mean, you are transparent saying that, yeah, but has anybody got any questions or discussion around what Morris?
Well, I wonder if I could have a response regarding the comment in the report about saying it will be appropriately managed, and whether or not that is, I'd imagine that some submitters might be a little concerned about that.
I understand that the content for this report may have been taken directly from the Section 95 notification determination, which requested public notification. I will take that and have to look into whether it's a direct excerpt of that particular material.
Maybe note from the applicant's commentary on their application.
That could very well be, because they requested it to be publicly notified. There's no requirement for Environment Southland and or the external person who's processing it to assess all of the effects in that notification report, because we're not actually determining whether they are or are not more than minor at that point, because the applicant has requested it to be publicly notified.
Mr. Chairman, I suggest on that would be, I think Councillor Lloydway is making a valid comment about the perception of predetermination, and probably an appropriate way to address that would be for the committee to strike out that approach and make it clear in its acceptance of the report that there's no predetermination in the appointment of the commissioner, and that phrase is removed from the report.
Yeah, that would resolve that, Mr. Chairman.
Right. So can that be done? Or do we need to move
I'll
that?
suggest that that sentence finishes the project and we take out from however the appropriately managed, because that is all
Do
probably.
that now, does that need to be done now? Or as part of the recommendations in this?
So I through you, Mr. Chair, I think that there could be a recommendation on as part of this meeting. This will go through to council, and I think it perhaps can be amended before, but obviously noted, and I'm just looking to see.
So we'll add it to the recommendations here.
Yeah, so that's captured, and I think then it can be amended prior to going to, and obviously the recommendations would reflect that.
Can we just add that, or do we need to move and pass that to put it into the recommendations? And then we'll be passing all the recommendations.
I would assume, I'm thinking, there's nobody here that I can see if I'm looking at you, but I think it would make sense to make a resolution, pass a resolution.
Made a recommendation, I've got a second. Yeah, amendment.
I'll move.
Can we move that?
I think, Mr. Chair, it would be.
You know which part?
I do know which part, and I just think it would be helpful to amend it and to be clearer that it is not about the consented works that are that are proposed at the moment. So it's not something that will be the actual application. It is referring to the land use consents that are not proposed to be consented to.
If I may, can I just check with the team, have you captured that sufficiently?
So Peter has moved it, so seconded it, and we need to know the wording you want to use.
So the is a resolution to strike out, remove, what page are we on?
We're on page 27, and what my suggestion was, it would just finish it for the project, and we'd go from however the environmental effects associated with the activities have been robustly assessed, and the application will be appropriately managed to strike out that whole piece, because that is something that will come through the process. Yeah.
So we're gonna move on secondary for that, is that right?
Who seconded? Who seconded?
Oh, well, Nickel can. I think, well, Peter. Yeah, moved it. So any more discussion on that? Alistair, you've got, is you not
No,
about
I'm
that? Not about that?
Not it, no, sorry.
Okay, I'll put that, and if all in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right. Put that in there as a part of the recommendations. Morris, you were bringing up maybe just clarity around who's on the panel. You were asking about the, how do we get panel selection and things? Could that be clear? And like, obviously, it's been questioned. There are other, and this is about, sorry, is this?
Can I make a point to that?
Yeah. No, good.
And I'm sitting with Morris on this because we have to have a succession plan, because my understanding is that councillor Cook isn't coming back for another term. Am I correct?
James White said it was another Bond movie.
Well, it's probably not about.
Things could change, right?
Things could
You're right.
change.
No, the succession planning is important, carry on.
So
Which is what I'm doing.
is it at all possible to put, because the two people we've got have got exceptional knowledge in these hearings and things like that. Can we put a co-person in there and start bringing new people in as a succession thing to learn? Is that possible? I don't know.
Nice question, but, yep. Yeah. Can we have a clarification? Oh, Nickel, can, go on, Nickel.
I'll go
I was just going to comment on the discussion. I'm quite comfortable about approving these, but as they stand, but Morris raises a valid point about using other councillors. And often, if somebody hasn't done it before, you might decide, well, this is not too controversial. You sort of don't drop them right on the bed. You probably start them off on something that's.
That's why I'm suggesting a co-situation.
Just to clarify, like I know in the Gore consent, Bonnie went on, didn't she, on the bridge consent. So we did again, someone new there. But I'm just saying, obviously, we look at experience, and sorry, Lyndall, you might be better to, just a bit of a conflict at the moment.
So if I may, I might ask the team to help me as I respond, but I think obviously the delegation sits with this committee, so that's the important thing to remember.
Yeah.
So the decision is this committee's. The staff recommendations generally follow, it looks at the best experience available to do it. So each individual consent, whether it's a meat works versus some other, they'll make each of the commissioners will have expertise in certain areas, and so the staff recommendation will follow that expertise, and really the decision is yours to make. If there's opportunity, we also, and I think maybe Bruce and Lacey can help here, there's also an extra cost with extra commissioners as well, so we need to be cognizant that we are, when doing this work, we're doing it as efficiently and effectively as possible. So those are matters that staff will consider before making recommendations. But we are, and this committee has been clear, that we do want to use our councillors and expand that experience as we go forward. So there undoubtedly will be opportunities for less experienced commissioners to come through on different consents. But I'll hand over to the team, because I see Bruce is headed to the table, and Lacey will help us out a little bit.
Yeah, Chairman. Probably Mr. Holmes has captured it, but one of the factors in the policy, you might recall this was a relatively new policy we brought in early this year to address the previous process where appointments were being made by the manager. And there was one of the elements that is in the policy is to consider that basically the efficiency of the panel. Like you could have a panel of 20 people for every application if you chose to do so, and you would have the power to do that. Applicants have a view on that because they incur the cost of that process. So when councillors are involved and external parties are involved, the costs are not insignificant. And so part of their decision making your decision making, their recommendations around the efficiency of the panel. Certainly the matter about succession is something that we can take on board for the future. It's a valid matter, and we do need to be providing opportunities for people to make use of the effort and time and money that's gone into people obtaining the decision-making qualification, and also to give people the opportunity to use that and not put all eggs in one basket, if you like. So it's certainly a valid issue that's been raised.
I suppose that just from my point of view, I can't, I'm not qualified, so I can look from the outside and it's that you make sure that, I suppose it's more than saying the opportunity for everyone, you know, if people wanting it and they're saying, hey, I'd like to be involved, they have that opportunity knowing that the panels, there are hearings coming up. I don't know whether that gets done, yeah, but it's just that process, making sure at the end of the day, we've got to look at experience, if people got time to do it, and, you know, and things like that too. So I don't have any problem, but we certainly need to look at the succession. Peter had his hand up.
Yeah,
Then Alistair.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's a really good idea. Could I suggest an idea could be like a non-contributing observer role for the panel? And I think this is bigger than a fleeting council career. We're talking about potential for ongoing community contribution by someone that carries on with their training and makes real difference to the community. That's what we should be fostering here. This is just a start, but quite often councillors' role might go for 3 years. It could go, if they're lucky, for 6 or longer, and then that's just lost to the community, all that training, all that investment. So I think we should be thinking a bit wider, but maybe a an observing member, non-contributing could be a low-cost way of probably building experience around processes. It's just a suggestion.
My suggestion is that we wear that cost, because we've put these people through one hell of a training program, and we're just going to let them sit out there. No, we've got to use them, and we've got to train them in the next step. So I like your point, Bruce, making that we will look in the future and make sure they are used and gain experience, so that when all the old ones die off. Yeah, me first.
That might be sooner than you think.
But we've got a system working.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I think we can certainly note this valid commentary for future recommendations. It is an aside. Mana Whenua representatives are the same situation. They've made contact with us. They're keen to grow their pool of experienced commissioners who can participate in RMA decision making. So we're looking at opportunities to deal with both of these situations.
Yeah, some good stuff here. Nicole.
I would suggest that perhaps start bringing that come into the next meeting, recognising that we have a pool available and there's ways of utilising that. So I'm happy to make that recommendation.
Right, that's all good. Well, I think that's been great. Just to be very transparent and things. If I've got to move, or for all the, I can do all the. Oh, sorry, Peter. Quickly, while you're moving
through to 5. Those recommendations as a group.
One in there, not the recommendation. The one we've added another recommendation. So is that right? Haven't we?
So
we got to.
You've moved and
moved.
seconded the amendment. Now we need to move and second the rest.
Okay, so we moved the amendment. Okay, yeah. So we just deal with these recommendations. Rightio. So you're moving.
I'm happy to second
Second it. Okay. If there's no further discussion, I'll put it. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Well done, everyone. And hopefully you're not all going to die tomorrow or anything.
And there will be an election that may change the meeting, things around the table as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Right, and that's me done.
Thank you. On item 10, extraordinary and urgent business, there was none notified for the meeting. And public good business, I don't think there was any of that on. No. Therefore, the meeting is concluded. Thank you for your input and your participation.
Okay.
That's
No,
exciting
I won't get
about
too excited
Yeah,
about this
quite
yet,
right,
because someone else has as well.
Oh, gosh, okay. I just thought it was just in general.
No, it's just for interesting.